Hello, I'm Esther Gidhu-Yuat. It's Friday, June 9th. This is Africa 54. Sudanese government declares UN envoy Volker Perthes persona non grata, accusing him of taking sides nearly 2 months into a brutal war between the forces of two rival generals. Weeks after the discovery of mass graves and a cult-like church in Kenya linked to Pastor Paul Mackenzie, some families are yet to trace their loved ones. We'll bring you the story of one family trying to piece together the whereabouts of their kin. And former U.S. President Donald Trump says he has been indicted for allegedly mishandling classified documents, and he plans to surrender as requested by federal authorities in Miami on Tuesday. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We're going to begin our news broadcast today in the Horn of Africa, where the United States and the World Food Program and other aid agencies are cutting food donations to Ethiopia because apparently the food is being stolen, and this investigation is going on. And for more on what's happening on the ground and why this food aid is being cut, I'm joined right here in the studio by Abraham Zere. He's VOA's program team lead for the Tigrinya service. Abraham, it's always a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
So let's start with what you're hearing from the ground. You have your reporters there, the officials there. Is there any official statement as to what exactly is going on? Who is stealing the food aid that the United States and other world international humanitarian aid organizations are giving, specifically WFP?
Yeah, yesterday, the day before yesterday, and yesterday, United States said we are suspending aid to Ethiopia. Initially, they suspended aid to Tigray region, and yesterday they said to Ethiopia, entire Ethiopia. And today, WFP said similarly, we are suspending aid to Ethiopia. The reason is they say the food aid has been theft. Has been stolen from the source, mainly diverted to military, both federal government military and then also regional governments, regional soldiers. So far, there is no official statement either from the government, from federal government of Ethiopia, but there were official statements from the concerned bodies like WFP, United States, USAID, but there was no official statement from the ground yet.
So as far as you know, and you're learning from your home front, how many people are impacted by this crisis?
So far, Ethiopia has been the largest food donor from US, and 20 million people are expecting, depending on food aid in Ethiopia. And WFP said today, 7 million people are affected by WFP's suspension of this aid. So all in all, it should be about more than 20 million people. And this has been affected mainly by the war and drought, which has affected the last 2 years for the country. And this is across the regions like Oromia, Amhara region, Tigray region, Afar, and all the regions practically.
All right, Abraham, we will get to the bottom of this as days go by. Thank you so much for your insight into what's happening in Ethiopia.
Thank you for having me.
Abraham Zele is a VOA Tigrinya program team lead. The Sudanese government has banned UN envoy Volker Perthes, accusing him of taking sides nearly 2 months into a brutal war between the forces of two rival generals. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Since late last year, Volker Perthes, a special representative of the Secretary General for Sudan, and the mission he heads have been targeted by military and Islamist-backed protests denouncing perceived foreign interference. Sudan's government on Thursday said, quote, "The government of the Republic of Sudan has notified the Secretary General of the United Nations that it has declared Mr. Volker Perthes persona non grata as of today."
We have demanded that Volker, the UN envoy to Sudan, be removed from his position. This man is the main one responsible for the war in Sudan, contributing to division and separation between the peoples of the same country.
The UN mission's Twitter feed said Perthes was in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia on Thursday for diplomatic talks. He has defended the UN against accusations of inflaming the conflict, saying those responsible are the two generals at war.
Fought with disregard for the laws and norms of war, attacking densely populated areas with little consideration for civilians, for hospitals, or even for vehicles transferring the wounded and the sick.
Last week, the uncertainty over the UN's status in Sudan was highlighted when the Security Council voted to extend the UN Integrated Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan for only 6 months. The mission in Sudan was created in June 2020 to support Sudan's democratic transition after the fall of Islamist military ruler Omar al-Bashir. Sudan's shattering path to civilian rule was disrupted in 2021 when the army commander General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Rapid Support Forces Commander Mohammed Hamdan seized power in a coup. However, they disagreed over a transitional government, and since April 15th, fighting between the army and RSF has gripped Khartoum and the western region of Darfur, defying a series of coups. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Turning to West Africa now, where Nigeria's new president Bola Tinubu's in-tray is filled with a litany of challenges from insecurity to economic woes. Tinubu, 71, was sworn in on May 29th, inheriting a record debt from his predecessor Muhammadu Buhari that include a falling oil production, dwindling electricity supplies, and foreign exchange shortages. Nigeria is also faced with insecurity from the Boko Haram terrorist group that Buhari had promised to defeat. On Wednesday, Tinubu defended his decision to stop subsidizing fuel, sparking panic buying of gas and concerns about inflation in one of Africa's top oil-producing countries. For more on Nigeria's economic and insecurity, I'm joined by Bulama Bukati, a senior analyst at the Extremism Policy Unit, Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, and a native of Nigeria. Mr. Bukati, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me, Esther.
Now, inheriting a litany of trouble as Tinubu did, what options does the president of Nigeria have to fix first the economy?
Yeah, I mean, the economy is very important, and of course, insecurity is related to the economy because the economy cannot thrive in an environment of insecurity. I think the president's argument was that fuel subsidy is what is holding Nigeria back, and there appears to be political consensus in Nigeria that fuel subsidy should be removed, and it is when the government subsidizes buying fuel, but all the major candidates of all the political parties before the election said they were going to remove fuel subsidy. That's because, number one, the system is abused. People inflate the amount of petrol they sell in order to claim money from government that they are not worth, but also Nigeria's fuel is the cheapest in the region. So it gets smuggled into Niger, Chad, Cameroon, where it is sold in the black market. And Nigeria is spending $10 billion per year in fuel subsidy. And that's why the president said it has to be removed. But the important question is, what would the government do with the savings? Because as you said in your introduction, it has led to panic buying, but also is exacerbating the economic problems in the country, in a country where poverty is endemic. And so the government has got to invest the money in education, in infrastructure, and help Nigerians to stop paying money for things government should have been providing. For example, the average Nigerian buys water because taps are not running in the country. We buy gas to put into our generator to give our homes light because there is no power supply. And if the government can invest the money into these areas, then Nigerians would be happy that fuel subsidy has been removed, but they are seeing the money in things that impact on their lives.
You just answered a question that I was going to ask, because a lot of people wonder, why should Nigerians line up for gas? Yet this is a country that produces so much oil in the continent of Africa, and that has still remained a challenge for a long time. Now, moving on, we haven't had much from the Boko Haram, and we don't want to hear much from them anyway. But still, there are a lot of people, civilians, being killed by other groups other than Boko Haram. What seems to be the problem here, and what options does the president have to deal decisively and kind of finally deal with those insurgents that continue to destabilize the country?
I mean, you are right. We haven't heard from Boko Haram for a while, and we are happy. Unfortunately, what is happening is that the ISIS affiliate faction of Boko Haram has dominated the group, and their approach is winning over local populations. So they deliberately don't attack civilians, and unless there are attacks on civilians, nothing is in the headlines. But they are making inroad into communities. They are winning over local populations, convincing them that we are not your enemies. Our enemies are the corrupt politicians who are also putting you down. So that's a great worry for me, because in the medium and the long term, that's going to be a big problem. But there are criminal gangs locally called bandits in the northwestern and north central parts of Nigeria wreaking havoc, and separatists in the southeast. Now, the president was right to make insecurity the major issue in his manifesto and the first issue in his inaugural speech, but he has to now get on with the job. And that includes, he has said he will increase the number of the military and equip them. But what Nigeria is really facing is internal security challenges. And what you need to do is to focus more on the police. And so the military is important, but you have got to focus on the police, increase their numbers. We only have 350,000 police officers in a country of 200 million, and 40 of them are in administrative duties, and a significant percentage are attached to BIPs. You also need to focus on border security, because the three major ingredients of insecurity in Nigeria, drugs, guns, and ultra-powerful Chinese-made motorcycles, are brought from outside Nigeria. And if you get border security right, a significant portion of the problem will go away, and therefore we have got to invest in immigration and customs and technology, but also in transnational cooperation, intelligence and security cooperation with our neighbors.
Bulama, very well put. I hope Nigeria becomes secure and economically empowered.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Bulama Bukati is a senior analyst at the Extremism Policy Unit, Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Weeks after the discovery of mass graves in a cult-like church linked to cult leader Paul Mackenzie in Kenya, some families are yet to trace their loved ones. One family has been relying on accounts and clues from survivors to try piece together the whereabouts of their kin. Saida Swale met this family from Mombasa and filed the following report.
Hakuna Mungu kama wewe.
They say a prayer. It is all they can do for now. Pray. This is the home of James Tole Mombela, brother to Nelson Mombela. It's been months since they saw their eldest brother, Nelson. It all began when his family noticed that he stopped taking his children to school and changed his lifestyle.
By that time, people didn't know about Mackenzie's teachings. Many would assume him. But my brother kept saying that the world is ending and Jesus is coming back. We all differed with him, including my mother and father.
Nelson Kimbichi Mombela would then quit his job and secretly move his family. His whereabouts would be a mystery. He then burnt all his documents and surrendered himself, together with his wife and 6 children, to the Shakahola farm.
One day, he reappeared in Kilifi area, and those that saw him say he looked very strange. They say he looked homeless and very troubled. His health had deteriorated.
It seems like they started training the kids slowly on how to fast. At one point, I asked my son if he was eating. He had lost a lot of weight.
When news broke out about the discovery of mass graves in Malindi, Shakahola, James made his way there to find out the whereabouts of his brother, sister-in-law and their 6 children. What he learned was shocking.
After asking around, one of the survivors told me about my niece Janet and his brother called Sylvester, and unfortunately, all 6 children, including their mother, had died.
My heart is aching because the Janet they mentioned is my first grandchild.
Investigators are finding bits and pieces to this cult-like sect. The deeper they went, the more shallow graves they found. They also found several personal belongings, one of them being this Bible belonging to a Mr. and Mrs. Nelson Kimbichi Mombela, the only proof the family now has that Nelson and his family were in Shakahola. His makeshift home being very close to the home of Pastor Paul Mackenzie, an indication of how close they were.
He was a very good boy. He was very quiet and very soft-spoken. In fact, his younger brother was louder and more talkative, but not him.
As a family, we went there looking for him, and we were told he escaped when the raids began. And it's been more than 3 weeks since. We're just praying to God that if he is found alive, well and good. And if we find out he has died, then it will all be God's plan.
The family has had to pitch camp in Mombasa from Taita for the DNA sample collection to be taken at the government chemist to aid in identification of bodies retrieved, with the numbers of those dead growing daily.
As Kenya Red Cross, we've registered 618 missing people. These are people reported by their family members that in one way or the other, they're either in Shakahola Forest or at the Malindi Sub-County Morgue.
For now, all they can do is wait and pray, hoping their worst nightmare comes to an end. It may be hard to determine just how long the government will take to complete the exhumation process in Shakahola, but for Nelson's family, the agony and scars left behind are here to stay. For VOA, I'm Saida Swale in Mombasa, Kenya.
Guinea-Bissau's opposition coalition has won a majority in legislative elections that will restore parliament after a 13-month absence, but likely end the president's hopes for constitutional reform. The PAI-Terra-Ranka coalition, led by the former ruling PAI-GC party, won 54 out of 102 seats in Sunday's poll. The Electoral Commission, according to the Election Commission, Madame G15, the party of President Umaru Sissoco Embalo, who dissolved parliament May last year amid accusations of corruption, won 28 seats. The result for now ends Embalo's plans to push through a change to the constitution that would have allowed him to consolidate power by ridding the country of its semi-presidential system. President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government will officially confer national hero status on late pioneering nationalist Dabaningi Sithole on Saturday, according to the Home Affairs Ministry. Sithole, who was founding ZANU leader and a cleric, died in December 2000 in the U.S. He was denied hero status by late ex-President Robert Mugabe following grudges the latter carried against him dating back to the liberation struggle in the 1970s. The former Chipinge lawmaker was last year posthumously conferred with national hero status by Mnangagwa. Sithole was regarded as the unsung hero of the country's liberation from colonial rule following years of persecution by Mugabe. He still commands a strong sentiment in his former Dao enclave in Chipinge. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, award-winning Cameroonian artist Jean Mengu Collins joins us live right here in studio. Stay with us.
With more than 5 million weddings taking place in Africa every year, you can expect pomp, color, and celebration in cities across Africa, especially on weekends as numerous weddings take place. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we will be taking a peek into the multi-million-dollar industry in which so many women have found empowerment. We will examine the opulence associated with African weddings, social media influence, and the general cost of marriage in our different cultures. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
Welcome back to Africa 54. Intercommunal fighting in a camp housing displaced people in the northern part of South Sudan has killed 13 people, according to the UN mission running the camp. The clashes between two ethnic communities living in the camp in Upper Nile State's capital, Malakal, first erupted on Thursday when a man was stabbed to death. One peacekeeper died and 4 others were seriously injured in an attack in a jihadist-hit northern Mali on Friday, according to the UN peacekeeping mission in the country. MINUSMA said on Twitter that a complex attack involving an improvised explosive device and direct fire targeted a petrol near the town of Ber. The nationalities of the victims were not specified. The Archbishop of Canterbury has urged the Anglican Church of Uganda to reject the country's new anti-LGBT law, saying there is no justification for Anglicans anywhere to support legislation that goes against the Christian teachings of the gospel. Under the law approved by President Yoweri Museveni in May, gay sex is punishable by life in prison, while aggravated homosexuality, including transmitting HIV, attracts the death penalty. In a stunning development, a federal grand jury in the southern U.S. state of Florida indicted former President Donald Trump Thursday over his retention of sensitive government documents after he left the White House. The Justice Department informed Trump's lawyers the indictment, and Trump confirmed the development on his social media platform with this reaction.
Very sadly, we're a nation in decline. And yet they go after a popular president, a president that got more votes than any sitting president in the history of our country, by far, and did much better the second time in the election than the first. And they go after him on a boxes hoax, just like the Russia hoax and all of the others. It's just been going on for 7 years. They can't stop, because it's election interference at the highest level. There's never been anything like what's happened. I'm an innocent man, I'm an innocent person.
Trump attorney James Trusty told the cable news network CNN the charges include willful retention of national defense information, obstruction, false statements, and conspiracy.
The former president says he's expected to appear here in federal court in Miami on Tuesday afternoon. A person familiar with the matter told the AP that the indictment against Trump includes 7 counts.
The indictment makes Trump the first former U.S. president to be charged in a federal court. The FBI search of Mar-a-Lago last August led to the discovery of more than 100 classified documents. Trump has denied any wrongdoing in connection with the documents. The AP's Balsamo also reports Trump is expected to appear at 2 events over the weekend. It's unclear whether or not he will keep those events on his schedule, given this announcement. For many successful Black South Africans, it's not easy spending all your income on yourself. Some are also financially responsible for family members who are struggling to make ends meet. Zahir Kasim in Johannesburg explores the complexities of what is known as black tax.
Kaya Mbanga has a deep passion for art and his family. He's enjoyed a successful career as an IT manager. But like many accomplished Black South Africans, Mbanga spends a significant portion of his monthly income on his extended family. He pays what is called a black tax.
4 months ago, I lost my dad in January 2023. He was just over 70 years old. And my youngest sister is still in university, and I've had to pick up her fees. And even before that, I've got 2 cousins. Although the support that I give to them is not as consistent, it's a duty almost that I have to do, because if you don't support them, when you get together with your family, you get a cold reception.
According to the 2023 Alliance Global Pension Report, African countries like South Africa, Kenya and Nigeria have some of the worst social pension systems in the world. In South Africa, the so-called old age pension is a government grant, the equivalent of around $105 a month paid to people 65 years and older. For most black elderly citizens, it's not enough to get by, so they rely heavily on their adult children for financial support. Ndumi Hadebe is the author of Handle Black Tax Like a Pro. She explains how South Africa's past created the black tax effect.
It is known more to be paid by black people because black people obviously in the previously pre-1994, they were excluded from advancing their careers, were excluded from accessing education opportunities. They could not participate in the economy actively. So black and brown people definitely make the highest number of people that pay black tax, but not limited to.
Auditing firm BDO, which works in 20 African countries, says black tax is common throughout the continent. In South Africa, the problem is exacerbated by high unemployment rates and laws that do not promote a personal savings culture. But things are changing.
We actually have a government now that has come into play and said we really need to protect people's savings. And there's been a very, very big problem in South Africa where when individuals actually change jobs, they would actually cash their retirement savings and actually use them. And this has actually exacerbated the burden on themselves as well as their family members.
Experts advise that families speak openly to one another about the benefits and burdens of black tax and find an affordable solution that works for everyone. Zayu Kasim for VOA News, Johannesburg.
Thank you, Zahir. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you Monday.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in